Classic WoW's in a bit of a weird place at the moment, and I wanted to talk about it, because I feel as though there's not been this level of uncertainty as to the future of the game before, and we've had several issues that have slowly arisen over time leading to where we are now. So I wanted to do a bit of a general talk about the state of the game in 2025 and how things may change in the future. In fact, it may be more how things have to change in the future. So I want to start off with this: choice overload, a behavioral phenomenon where having too many options can actually make it a bit more difficult to make a decision. World of Warcraft used to be really simple. You have retail, you either play retail and like it, or you don't like it and don't play it, and that's it. In 2019, Classic came around and it was a huge moment for Blizzard and World of Warcraft. There were tons of new subscribers and people trying out the game and a massive amount of hype. And because of this, there now became two versions of WoW, with retail and vanilla. Though vanilla inevitably came to a close, we were always going to get to that day where they had to make a decision about what to do next. But Blizzard wanted to keep vanilla around, so they committed to creating Classic era realms, albeit at a cost initially. And as vanilla progressed on to TBC, then we got three versions of WoW between Era, TBC and Retail. Midway through TBC, Blizzard also dropped their first ever seasonal server, Season of Mastery. Doesn't do too well overall, though it has its niche player base, several issues surrounding it which we're not going to get into again today, mostly to do with the timing of it releasing a bit too close to comfort to vanilla for most people. But now with this, we have four versions of WoW between Era, TBC, Season of Mastery and Retail. At this point, TBC is progressing along, Era is still completely dead, Era was dead for such a long time, and Season of Mastery is going along as well. But it's all good because Wrath of the Lich King is on the horizon, and Wrath was the second biggest moment after the launch of vanilla itself for Classic World of Warcraft. It was really hyped up, possibly even a bit too hyped up as it turned out in retrospect. Also, you may not have realised, but Season of Mastery still existed for about the first year of Wrath of the Lich King 2. Yeah, it went on for way longer than you would have expected. TBC, however, as we progressed on to Wrath, did not receive Era realms. As mentioned, Era was still looking as though it was basically a mistake, completely dead, next to no interest. I'd log on to do videos or just see whether it was lively occasionally, and there would literally be a handful of people online. So you can't really blame Blizz given the situation for not doing TBC Era as well. We'll see if this happens the second time around. So Wrath comes along and replaces TBC, and we're still at four versions of WoW between Era, Wrath, Season of Mastery and Retail. Season of Mastery finally closes halfway through Wrath and is the first version of World of Warcraft to officially end ever. Overall, it had positives to it, but it never really felt as though it had its own unique player base. Also, halfway through Wrath of the Lich King, two more things start to happen. One is that Classic Era finally starts to show signs of life. There's speculation as to why this happened at this point in time. Perhaps Wrath of the Lich King didn't meet the hype for a lot of players, and maybe the content was getting a bit too far away from that classic feel, too difficult, too sweaty, too many mechanics, not what people want on their raid night. They wanted something laid back and chill, not to be shouted at by their raid leader. The second thing that happened during Wrath is that the organically created player-made mode Hardcore WoW started to gain traction. This is just playing vanilla with one life though. This taught people to play the game in an entirely different way than they've become accustomed to, and it became super popular. In fact, there was actually a hardcore toggle on Season of Mastery realms way back when, and this game mode had been going for a long time prior to Wrath of the Lich King. It just really took off at this point in time. And due to the popularity of player-made hardcore, Blizzard decided to create their own official hardcore realms, which came out in August 2023. These were the first set of hardcore realms before the new ones that would later come with Anniversary. So also during Wrath in BlizzCon of September 2023, Blizzard announced their next seasonal project, Season of Discovery, which will be vanilla with class changes, new items, phase leveling and so on. Incredible amount of hype for this. This had hundreds of thousands of players raiding on release. So both official hardcore and Season of Discovery happened during Wrath. By the end of Wrath, we're now at 5 versions of WoW: Era, Wrath, Season of Discovery, Hardcore, Retail. But of course, as all expansions do, Wrath came to an end and we got Cataclysm. It started off surprisingly well given its very shaky reputation, but the player base came down quite fast because, again, similar to Wrath, the raiding was quite difficult, and at the end of the day I just think this was getting a bit far away from that classic feel for most people. There were also many issues with the general quality of the expansion on its re-release. Mid-Cataclysm though, we get a surprise with World of Warcraft's 20th anniversary bringing along a new set of fresh realms which released in November 2024. These were a set of no changes vanilla realms with confirmation that they will progress onto TBC, and there were also new hardcore realms for, I don't know, some reason. These new realms do really well and are still going strong despite being in the all too not very popular AQ phase, though I get the feeling as though they are a TBC waiting room and the amount of people in that waiting room is rather large. So now we're mid-Cata with 6 versions of WoW between Era, Cata, Season of Discovery, Hardcore, Anniversary and Retail. Towards the end of Cata, Blizzard announced they're stopping work on Season of Discovery, whilst not closing it straight up as though they did with Season of Mastery. Well, it turns out as though people were playing Season of Discovery for the new content and for the future for the game it was providing. Since this announcement, Season of Discovery has dropped about 80% of its raiding population. So yeah, it's kind of over. I don't know if this population will grow again significantly, and honestly, I'm pretty doubtful about it. So Cataclysm ends, there are no Cataclysm Era realms, shocker really, and then we progress on to Mists of Pandaria, the most recent classic expansion, which brings us up to today, where we also have 6 versions of WoW between Era, Mists of Pandaria, Season of Discovery, Hardcore, Anniversary and Retail. Mists of Pandaria has got underway and the first week of raiding has happened, and as expected for me, it has been the least popular opening week of raiding in a more modern classic expansion. Even Cataclysm had more players. Now, by all accounts, from what you hear about Mists of Pandaria, it should do better than Cataclysm. And even as someone that enjoyed Cataclysm personally, I think Mists of Pandaria was better overall. But Mists of Pandaria is coming at a time where it has several problems. It's this strange midpoint throughout classic and retail where I think quite a few people might have tried it back in the day if they wanted to, and also the raiding's quite difficult, and there are 2 extremely long raids which you're probably not going to be clearing in one night for a very long time. It has the remainder of the player base left over from Cata, whereas at least Cata had the remainder that came with Wrath of the Lich King, which was obviously more, and the horizontal content such as the collections and there being generally more to do in Mists of Pandaria is not having the payoff that it should due to a lack of long-term vision for classic. An uncertain future doesn't bode well for collection-based content. When you collect something, and I think this goes for in-game or in real life, you're doing it because you're going to have that thing long-term which you can enjoy for a long time. You don't restart your collections or collect the same things time and again unless, well, maybe you're trying to sell them, that is. And I think when people look forwards ahead of Mists of Pandaria, they see Warlords of Draenor and think, do I really want to invest time into doing stuff which isn't in the moment during this expansion? I've said it before, but if the opening of Mists of Pandaria didn't beat Cataclysm, then I think that's going to be it for modern classic expansions still progressing as they have been doing, and that Blizzard will do remixes of expansions in the future rather than classic. Now we have literally seen this happen. I think the writing is on the wall, and I, at this point, highly doubt they will do WoD or Legion. I also think Blizzard are doing what is basically A/B testing at the moment with Mists of Pandaria. They've already done Test A, which was remixing, now they're doing Test B, which is classic, which performs better player-wise for player retention, revenue, and so on. I know remix and classic are 2 very different things, but I 100% believe remix already having happened for Mists of Pandaria has had a large impact on the size of the player base. It should be doing better than it is. Anyways, back to the issue of choice overload between all these versions of World of Warcraft that we have, because I want to add some more nuance to the conversation. Whilst there is literally 6 versions, there are also kind of isn't. There are versions of WoW which are progressive and ones which are static. The progressive ones are Retail, Anniversary, and Mists of Pandaria. The static ones are Era, Hardcore, and Sod. Static game modes don't provide as much of a dilemma when it comes to choice due to the fact that they will not change more or less. Era is just plain vanilla, Hardcore is, well, the same but you have one life, and Season of Discovery is its whole own thing where we're not really entirely sure what's going to be happening with it beyond it currently still exists. Of course, MMOs still take significant time investment and there is a choice to be made here, but their unchanging nature doesn't present a window of opportunity where you can play the game before the content is gone. Progressive WoW versions in Retail, Anniversary, and Mists of Pandaria are the problematic ones because they're all divided up into blocks of content that will last some 3 to 5 months or so, and if you don't play during that time, you will miss whatever existed then. And since you absolutely can miss out, that's where the choice overload becomes a problem, and I think people are just getting a bit burned out of all these different versions of WoW trying to compete for their attention. It's hard to invest time into an MMO when there are so many competing options from a genre that we all know demands a lot of time for long-term goals to be achieved. On top of that, there is uncertainty as talked about previously with Mists of Pandaria and also with Anniversary Realms. I've said before at BlizzCon 2026 they're likely to announce Wrath of the Lich King for Anniversary Realms 2, but then what? Where do these servers go? Will they reset? Will there be TBC Era? Will there be Wrath Era? Will they do Cataclysm again? Maybe. TBC and Wrath Era are probably okay for the same reason as the other static game modes, since they don't create as much conflict in choice due to no time constraints on any particular patch's relevance. But the idea of there being more fresh than we've already got, well, I'm just gonna say it, but fresh needs to stop. It's not normal for MMOs, it's a relic back from the private server days where they finally got a version of vanilla working enough and they could just release it and re-release it endlessly with no oversight for what comes next. I don't think fresh after fresh should be all Blizzard aims to do with Classic for, I was gonna say long term, but we already are long term. It's been about 6 years now since Classic came out, so in that case for any longer than they already have been doing. What Classic needs is A reduction in choices, and B, something to make players believe in their character being a long-term project. The answer to all of the above will hopefully be the next major project that Blizzard is working on, which, fingers crossed, is Classic Plus. And the next year should see a large overhaul in how Classic WoW will work in the future, and Blizzard really have to do it in the next year with how everything is lining up. For me, by the end of MOP, those characters should be transferred onto Retail, and Remix will provide chances to go back to old expansions in the future from here on out. Season of Discovery is something that Blizzard promised to keep around, but at this point I'm not sure if it's worth it. A very specific custom version of WoW isn't something I can see growing again much. For me, I'd close Sod by next BlizzCon and figure out what to do with those characters. You could offer free transfers over to TBC Anniversary, which would still be going then, and we should also get an announcement to progress on to Wrath Classic afterwards at BlizzCon 2026. At least the content pacing of Wrath is reasonably similar to Sod, it has that going for it. I think Anniversary Realms as they are progress through to Wrath, with both Era Realms for TBC and Wrath as they end. No further resets of Fresh for Anniversary though, just leave them in an Era state in the future. This would mean Wrath on Anniversary would exist at the same time as Classic Plus, but it's kind of unavoidable really. It's a conflict of interest that shouldn't happen, but things are lining up this way. So with this in mind, Classic Plus should release late 2026, early 2027. Wrath Anniversary would be ending sometime in 2027. You'd have those static versions of the game with no updates, and you'd also have Era Realms for the first 3 expansions, whereas the progressive versions of WoW would have changed to just Retail and Classic Plus. There's still many versions of the game going on here at the same time, but the ones that have live patches and are actively updated is reduced from 3 down to 2, which I think is the most important thing here. If somehow Wrath or TBC Era didn't happen, it would just be 4 versions which would simplify things more, and you would just have Vanilla and Hardcore as alternative versions of WoW from Classic Plus or Retail, but this may be seen as a missed opportunity in the long term for Blizzard. Ideally, Classic Plus will need to be the version of Classic to play long term, and people who invest time there should feel as though their character will be there forever, as these realms will be consistently updated. It's why, whatever they do with Classic Plus, one of the main things for it to achieve is permanence as its own MMO within the WoW universe. There will be stuff people like or don't like, but as long as it exists and has no plans to end, that's what really matters. I also want to bring up really quick something that I'm sure you've seen happening at the moment, and that is the popularity of old school RuneScape, and many WoW creators over on YouTube or Twitch heading over to that. So I don't want to speak specifically for people and put words in people's mouths why they are doing this, because it will be different for everyone, I imagine. But if you have many people whose career has grown around playing your game, you've released a new game, and many of them are not playing your game, that kind of tells me there's a problem here. Something's gone wrong. And I think it's not just the content creators either. Many people looking to a new MMO on the dawn of a fresh expansion and more uncertainty to the future paints a wider picture of the classic player base, especially since Mists of Pandaria appears at this early stage as though it won't outperform Kata. I'm kind of on the same boat. I don't see myself playing Mists of Pandaria too much, if I'm honest. The thing is, I played a lot of MOP back in the day. It was a great expansion, and I think if you're going in fresh from Cataclysm and you haven't seen it before, you will have a lot of fun. But similar to what I brought up earlier, the horizontal content just isn't going to have that same payoff when, to be honest, I've already done it, and the game, much like many previous versions of Classic, is just going to end up being raid logging for me. And I'm going to be honest, I'm super burned out of raid logging. I don't want to play a game just to have to log in at a set time a few different times per week anymore, or not for a long time anyway. On top of that, I've no idea what's happening beyond Mists of Pandaria either, really. I can tell you I'm not that interested in WoD, and that a Legion re-release would not be as good as people are making it out to be. Funnily enough, I made a video 4 years ago saying that Legion Classic wouldn't be that great, because what made it good back then has been iterated upon and improved massively since its release in 2017, and compared to the quality of life and improvements on the systems you have now in the War Within, it would just feel bad. And they'll have already remixed it anyway, so if MOP's anything to go by, it won't be as popular as expected. But those are just a few topics which I felt like talking about today. Though the next year for Classic World of Warcraft, specifically up to BlizzCon 2026, I imagine is going to hold pretty huge answers for the future of this version of the game. Until then, for me at least, and it seems for many people, Classic is in a bit of a weird spot at the moment. As for me, I'm still going to be doing WoW content on this channel, of course. I don't feel as though I've been covering the current Classic expansion for some time now, not since early to mid Cataclysm, and I've just been doing random topics across all WoW expansions, which is fine with me because there's so many more subjects and things to talk about, and I get to branch out a little bit more within the WoW sphere. Who knows, there may be the odd bit of content from other games too. If you've watched me for long enough, you know that I've already played a fair bit of RuneScape, so I may do the odd video on that. What do you hope to see for the future of Classic though? Do you reckon my theory will pan out as I went over, and does it sound good or bad to you? Let me know below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.